So, hello to YouTube as well. We have Yaowei Zhang here with us, and he did something over in Australia, which he's going to talk about with us. So, Yaowei, just introduce yourself and tell us what you did over the weekend.
So hi, my name's Yaowei. I won the New South Wales State Championships. So basically, Australia is a very big country geographically,
Yeah,
and one of the biggest complaints we had over the last few years was how much traveling we had to do. So they were like, okay, it's such a big country, we'll split it up into five main states, and each one of
cool.
them will have their own separate championship. Sort of like how South Africa this year had two.
Hmm.
They had Cape Town and Johannesburg, which makes sense because some countries are like fairly big if you compare it to European countries, right?
Absolutely.
Y Yep. So I would say that my state is the most competitive in Australia. It was a lot easier this time around because Poe was busy in Hartford winning that YCS.
Oh yeah.
So
You,
yeah,
you could tell
so
that your area is competitive when the YCS Hartford champion is apparently from your area as well.
yeah, we also have Bowden, so
Oh yeah.
that's another big name.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so that's essentially what happened. I was able to win mine, so I will then move on to play our Continental Championship sometime later this year, which hasn't been announced. I think
Hmm.
Euros hasn't been announced either, right? So I think we're
Indeed,
in the same
indeed.
boat.
Yep.
Mm.
We
But
are, we are.
I'm glad that will be a different format. I think two we get at least one or two sets out for that, so that the meta will change a little bit.
It should, yeah.
Mm, mm.
Absolutely. But yeah, you made a very bold call and piloted the Salamangreat deck into the event. So, any introduction on why you chose the deck in general? Why you decided for Salamangreat?
Yeah, so I'll give a bit of background to myself. So I played competitively from maybe like 10 years ago to about 2018. 2018 was when I finally decided to hang my boots, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a step back. This game is getting a little bit expensive.
Hmm.
Life. I'm getting older. I've got more priorities in life, so I kind of stopped buying cards then.
Sure.
Um, but thankfully, I have a lot of good friends in my community who are willing to lend me whatever they're not using. So I generally have access to most decks. This time around, I didn't have access to Despia,
Hmm.
but that's fine. And then from 2019 to 2020, I was like you, where I would just go into event management and casting.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so that way I could stay involved in the game without actually playing.
Which is very lovely,
Uh,
right? That's such a great
yeah,
opportunity to be still around on every event, pretty much.
definitely. And you know what? If you're casting, you can't lose on the bubble, so it's fine.
That's absolutely
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So 2020, 2021, COVID was a thing, so we didn't really have any live events. So that was a really good time to save a bit of money. 2022 came, events started coming back. Um, but still, I don't have most cards. I only own staples, like the old ones.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I haven't really played too much of the game. About a week before the tournament, I asked Bowden what's a good deck that I could play.
Hmm.
He was like, you know what, Salamangreat is a playable deck and it's definitely viable and it's like pretty well positioned right now. It's something that he thinks I could play.
Hmm.
Obviously, I've known Bowden for a long time, so he kind of knows what kind of decks I like playing and how good I can pilot them.
Yeah.
He gave me a list. And throughout the week, I solitaired a bunch of hands. I played some games on Dueling Book. I lost a lot to ABC on Dueling Book, and I figured that matchup was just unwinnable.
Hmm.
But everything else seemed fine. Um, the day before, I had a wedding, so I couldn't really practice. And then on the day, I just showed up. I wrote my deck list, and then the head judge, who was my friend, he said, "Oh, I had a Salamangreat. I had a Sword Soul deck if you wanted to borrow." And I was like,
Oh.
"Well, I've already written my
Bro.
deck list."
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not really a Salamangreat deck, and it's not really a Code Talker deck. It's sort of like just I call it Heat Soul and Pray. I just summon Heat Soul turn one,
Hmm.
um, and then turn two I just go for the access code. So the idea is between Buffalo and Heat Soul, you're drawing four cards. So you're seeing four cards, and if you have a high concentration of hand traps in your deck, you're very likely to see enough of them to be able to interrupt your opponent's plays.
Yep.
And so that was the basis of my deck. Just make Heat Soul, draw hand traps, stop them, and then when they pass back, just access code them. And I just stuck to it. And I'm sure, as you understand with Salamangreat, it's how good it is dependent on how many hand traps there are in the meta. If there are a lot of
Mm.
hand traps, Salamangreat's not very good, and if there's no hand traps, Salamangreat can take advantage of that. And since Despia was the most popular deck, people weren't playing many hand traps. In fact, most Despia decks weren't playing any hand traps at all.
Yeah.
So I was able to capitalize on that, especially game ones. Game ones, I know there wasn't going to be any Nibiru, so I was able to just go all in.
Yeah.
Game
Yeah.
2 and 3, depending on the matchup, I would change my strategy, but still there weren't many hand traps in the meta. So that was the idea. In terms of the deck list, so the hand traps are pretty standard. Ash, Vela, Crow are really good at disrupting, and they're very good general ones.
Hmm.
And they actually have a really cool application in that in more than one occasion I've had to normal summon it, make Almirage, and then all the Salamangreats in the graveyard alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's applicable. Nibiru was good because I needed a way to beat a lot of the combo decks, the pile decks, the brave piles, the adventure piles.
Yeah.
You just needed a way to beat them. ABC as well. Imperm was really good, but I only played two because I didn't go to 42 cards, and it was really bad if you drew it off Heat Soul on their turn. It's like fine if you
Yeah.
draw it on. So I just want to limit that and just play three DD Crows instead of two DD Crow and three Imperms.
Yeah, and you
So
can't
that's a
really
hand.
see on the that's ogre on the left, right? Because the picture is a bit
Uh,
blurry.
sorry, that's Vela.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, that's Valor. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I see.
Uh, All right, so that's the hand traps part of it covered. Call by the Grave is also there. So Call by the Grave, obviously, we don't really need to go
Yeah.
into. Hand traps are really good against Salamangreat, so Call by the Grave is really good at beating that.
Yep.
Two Desires, I'm only allowed to play two. And then we'll go into Salad cards. I wanted to play as few Salamangreat cards as possible. Because you don't want to break on too many monsters in this deck. I played two Jack Jaguar because Jack Jaguar is a one card Heat Soul. You just make Splash Mage, summon it back, and then that's Heat Soul. Spinny, similar, but Spinny works really well with Buffalo and Gazelle. Falco was probably the weakest one. It does come up sometimes where you like banish one Jaguar of Desires, but you can summon Falco and Jaguar, and then that's Baguska, and that auto wins a lot of your matchups.
Hmm.
It can also set Circle back. Uh, in hindsight, this could just be a dot scaper and it'd be very similar, but I think it was fine. Foxy was also really weak, but Zombie World is a card in the meta right now, so you actually have to play an out to it. And I guess it doesn't break Mystic Mind, but it breaks
Not
Zombie
really.
World.
Yeah.
Yeah, and any other spells or traps. And it's also level 3, so you can make Mirage Delio. And then we go to the top row. So we'll start with Buffalo. Buffalo, I think, is significantly better than Lady Debug. I think a lot of the times, if your Lady Debug does get hand trapped, you probably just lose the game.
Hmm.
Buffalo lets you draw two cards, which is really good, especially when you're trying to dig for hand traps. And I don't think I really had a situation where I didn't have enough Cyburst to discard off it. I've even discarded Gazelle off it because I think resolving the draw two is a lot better than resolving a Gazelle.
Yeah. So I think it's very easy to say that Buffalo is just better than Debug in this deck when you actually don't want to draw into your Salamangreat cards or your Cyberse cards and you rather want to draw into the hand traps, right? So drawing
Yeah,
two instead of just searching a card you're not really happy to have in your hand anyways is just way better.
yeah, and on top of that, like on the subsequent turns, you can summon it back with Splash Mage. Splash Mage will negate whatever it summons back, but when
Hmm.
Buffalo goes back to the graveyard, you can use its effect again. So that came up quite a lot of times where you'd be just drawing like so many extra cards a turn and seeing so many more cards.
Yeah.
Parallel Exceed was, I think, was a greedy choice of mine. The idea is that Baguska is really strong in this meta.
Hmm.
It auto wins like the Flunder matchup. It auto wins the Despia matchup. It auto wins or it does really well into the Sword Soul matchup if you ignore the shooter. So that's why I played that. And then it's just a good extender, especially when you get Nibiru. So game 2 and game 3 Nibiru is real. Sometimes or all the time you get Nibiru, you turn the token into a Link Spider, you trigger the Parallel Exceed, and you access code them anyway. So
Yeah.
ideally, you just play without the Parallel Exceeds unless you absolutely have to. And then Microcoder was, I think, a really good pick because it solves a lot of problems where you don't have enough monsters on the board.
Hmm.
And you can link it away from your hand. It's a dark, so it's a different attribute, so you can make Heat Soul with it, and then it searches the counter trap, Signet Conflict.
Yeah.
Um,
Somebody in chat asked
um,
what that trap is, but it's Signet Conflict. It's just a
yeah,
counter trap when you control Code Monster, I
Code
think.
Talker.
Code Talker, yeah.
Yeah. When you control Code Talker, it negates any spell trap or monster effect, and then they also can't use a card with the same name until the next turn.
Yeah.
Like the end of the next turn. So I've had someone try to double evenly me, didn't work. Yeah. You get so many judge calls from that card because they're all like, oh, that's not a code talker, and you're like, no, Heat Soul is a code talker, and then they're like, access code is not a code talker, and you're like, well, there's an access code in the picture, so yeah, that was the only annoying thing about it. You get a lot of judge calls because people don't understand what a code talker is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was really powerful. It's definitely a lot better than the Salamangreat trap cards because it's searchable. The Salamangreat trap cards are a lot harder to navigate to and play. You need like a really strong hand to do it.
Mm.
And ideally, I just want to make the least plays as possible. I want to just sit on a Heat Soul, make it really awkward for them to hand trap. In hindsight, I would consider playing the Rage, the one that's like a destroy card,
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
counter trap. Yeah, that's the one I would have considered playing. But I think my opponents all played around it anyway because they thought I would have it, but I don't play it.
That's crazy. I think I've not seen a Salamangreat list without one of the two traps, at least, so far.
Yeah, yeah, but they're still going to play as if you have it, so
Yeah,
the
yeah, of
mind games are
course. That's a
there.
very, very good mind
Mm,
game. Indeed, indeed.
mm,
But like in general, people would probably even side out Mystic Mine versus you because it's honestly not that great if you're on Rage and all that stuff. But
yeah.
in fact, you don't have an auto Mystic Mine in your main deck, right?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah.
No. Oh, conflict, I guess.
Yeah, okay, yeah, on activation, of course. Yeah, sure, sure.
But otherwise, if they have multiple or yeah, then I'm in trouble. But thankfully, my striker opponent in the finals didn't have a game one. Oh no, he didn't have a game one, but he won anyway. And then game two had the twisters, and game three I had the feather duster. So, I guess got pretty lucky in that regard.
Fair enough. I mean, game 2 and 3 is a whole different beast. Like,
Yep. So moving on to the extra deck. The extra deck is really tight, and I know the first question everyone's gonna ask is why there's only one Sunlight Wolf. What this is where I keep coming back to. It's not really a Salamangreat deck. I mean, I don't play the traps, and I only play one Sunlight Wolf.
yeah, yeah.
In testing, I never made the second one, and I honestly rarely made the first one. You have to have a really good hand, but then those usually get hand trapped or play into Nibiru or something. Um, so I always felt that one was sufficient. You could always shuffle it back with Jack Jaguar anyway. Uh, two Balinks was usually just enough because I was always shuffling the first one back with Jaguar anyway. Funny thing about this deck is because it only plays that, the Sanctuary is 90% of the time just an upstart Goblin. It's just you summon the Balinks, you draw a card for free. A lot of times I wouldn't activate the Sanctuary because I didn't need to, and I would just discard it for mining later.
Mhm.
Or if I'm doing the Jaguar into Heat Soul play, that's like one of the only times I do it.
Yeah.
Almirage, like I said before, it's a Salamangreat. You can normal summon a hand trap, or your Salamangreats are in the graveyard alive. Link Spider, that's exclusively for when you get Nibiru'd, and you can access code them anyway. Lingeribo, I think that's pretty standard. It's just a different attribute, so you can make Heat Soul.
Yeah.
Also, in the course of the tournament, it only really stopped one Dynamorphia trap card, the one that fusion summons from the deck, using a monster from the deck.
Yeah, yeah.
But I guess it stops evenly as well if anyone was playing that. Heat Soul doesn't need explaining. Transcode, Update Jammer, Access Code don't need explaining. Splash Mage, I played two because you use one really early on to make the Heat Soul, and then you just need a second one later to climb into Access Code. If you have like three monsters, that's Access Code with two attacks.
Yep, yep.
And that's how I won most games. Baguska is auto win against most matchups. So Despia, Sword Soul, not really, but Despia, Flunder, and most common decks in the meta. Mirage Deluge is there, but I never really went into it because a lot of times if it gets hand trapped, you probably just lose. It locks you into fire, so you can't use Splash Mage, which is a really big deal.
Yeah.
You can't use Parallel Exceed, which is also a really big deal.
Ever considered running other level 4 XYZs?
Dweller, but I think Bagusco covers the Dweller matchups anyway. I don't think I would touch the extra deck. I think it's good the way it is. I went through every single card in the extra deck most matches.
Hmm.
Sometimes I would make Mirage Deluge and I wouldn't summon from the deck,
Yeah.
but I would just link it away to get rid of a monster. But yeah, I think you have to have really good hands to be able to play with Mirage Deluge and to end on like good boards because it locks you into fire.
Yeah.
Side deck, so Token Collector, don't need to explain those. Twin Twister, don't need to explain those. Fragrances are really good when you draw them. So there's 2-dimensional barriers and 1 Grave of the Super Ancient Organism.
Ooh, you gotta explain us once again what this card is actually doing.
So Grave of the Super Ancient Organism says that level 6 or higher special summon monsters cannot attack or activate their effects.
Yep.
So that's every fusion in Despia and essentially everything in Sword Soul.
Yeah.
Why did I play 1? Well, like I said before, I was at a wedding the day before, so I didn't know what cards I needed, and on the day, between the 129 players registered, I could only find 1 copy. And it's fair, no one carries it around. But
Yeah.
it functions the same way as D Barrier, but it's also good like going if you draw it after they've made their board because you can just flip it up. All their things can't attack, they can't use their effects. You just accumulate advantage to a point where you can just summon access code, clear their board, and OTK them.
Yeah.
Every time I drew it, I won that game.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how is Despia even outing this when you have it face up on the field and established? Because they can't summon Chimera. What are they doing? Like, I don't really see anything.
They could have the Harpies feathered also that they
Yeah,
have.
I mean, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
But engine wise, is there anything any engine wise they could do to deal with this?
Not that I can think off the top of my head. If chat knows an easy way, feel free to
Yeah,
throw it out.
absolutely. Yeah. But it
Yeah,
seems
it's
very,
not.
very hard because there's just you can't summon Chimera to out it, obviously, and there's not really back row removal. I mean, you can chain like Branded and Red to it. That's like a bit of a bummer. But no, even then, the card on the field will not resolve anymore because the grave will
They
be
can't
resolved
activate
when
it.
summoned. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. It's really tough.
Yeah. So because I only had 1, I had to play 2 D barriers, which D barriers never like underperformed. They always did what they were supposed to do. So we
Sure.
just passing their turn. But yeah, ideally I would have played 3 grave. Vishuda does out it in Sword Soul, so you just gotta make sure
Ooh,
the
yeah.
10-year plays are all gone.
That's true.
But
That's true.
but other than that, like into an established board when they've already used all of their cards, then Grave can just end the game because you're free to just keep drawing until you can safely access code them. And then there's the last 3 power spells: Mind Control, Change of Heart, Harpy's Feather Dusters. They're all really just good going second. Change of Heart, Mind Control, you just get rid of any threat. A lot of times you just point at Mirror Jade and they're forced to use it. You just point it at anything really, gets it off the board. Against Sky Strike, it's really good. You just take the Sky Striker link and they don't recur Ray. Just take anything really. And
Was it
Harpy's
really
Feather
good?
Dusters.
Did you side it in a lot and did you resolve it a lot? Like both mind control and change of heart?
Well, I saw them like a fair amount of times, like not more than what you would expect from 12 rounds of play. Um, I've definitely had to take my own Nibiru tokens before. Like if you Nibiru Despia, they have really big tokens. I've change of hearted 1 to hit them for 4.5k before. Yeah, they were really good. I don't know if I would play anything over them, something more consistent like a 3 of card,
Yeah.
but I think those cards were fine.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so that's essentially the deck. Like I said, you don't really play it as a Salamangreat deck. You don't really play it as a Code Talker deck. You just play it as like a Heat Soul control, and then on the turn 2, you just access code them.
Yeah, which is absolutely fair. Like, I mean, there's also a striker deck winning YCS Hartford, which a lot of people are not considering a striker deck, and like You just
Mm.
make use of these strong cards in the deck, and you pretty much shape your deck around the strong cards you have. So Heat
Mm.
Soul Turbo pretty much would be the name that people would give this deck, right?
Definitely. But do bear in mind that if you are considering this for your nationals, the meta would have shaken up a lot over the weekend because people's opinions on like hand traps and back row removal would have
Mm,
changed. Obviously with Sky Striker winning and the
yeah,
representation of the combo decks, people would change their mind about their ratios. They might be more mindful of playing back row removal and hand traps as well.
yeah.
So you're not going to be able to capitalize on a Despia field where no one's playing hand traps anymore.
Yeah, I'm going into national this weekend. I'm playing Dutch nationals, and it's such a weird situation. Like the format is like at such a weird point where I don't feel like I want to play anything because everything feels. You don't want to play Despia or Swordsel because still everybody will be on Dimensional Barrier and anti spells, so it's like a bit awkward to play these decks. But the mine decks are also now on everybody's radar, so you don't really want to play any going second mine strategies or something. And it just also I think people would start playing more hand traps now that Despia is underperforming so hard. So you actually want to play more hand traps again. It's super weird.
Yeah, so before going into this weekend, I would have safely said that technical play was probably more important than deck building.
Yeah.
But I think after this weekend, it might change. I think people who do well are definitely going to be the ones who make a really good meta call based on the environment. Like, you have to understand where the field you're playing into. Like, I have a really good grasp on what people in Australia like playing.
Mm.
Generally, a lot less meta than European or North American YCSs. So you have to be able to read the field, see what everyone's playing, like have a good guess on what everyone's playing and what strategy you can use to beat it, and how you ensure against strategies that could come up that you're not potentially prepared for in the main deck.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely have to dive into that and have to think about it beforehand, whether you can afford to play a meta deck in such an environment or not. Whether playing Heat Soul Turbo is the correct meta call, and apparently in Australia it is.
Mm.
Yeah, so once again, congratulations for taking down the event. You have that nice trophy now next to your name. So, are you going to attend? Like, you probably are going to attend your Oceanic Continental
Yeah,
Championship, right?
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll definitely be there. So don't you worry. I do look forward to going to Europe for another YCS.
Ooh,
I've been to a number of those.
which? Oh, to a number of those. That's nice. Cool. Which was your
Yeah, I
last
went
one?
to so I went to Lille in 2015.
Oh,
Except when I was on my flight, it got cancelled, and I'd already like landed in London. I was like, okay, cool. Um,
ouch.
I played the 200th
Hmm.
Utrecht,
Yes, yes.
and I played the one 2 months after that, Milan.
Which one?
Yeah, Milan, 2018.
Yeah, there was one in Milan. Yeah,
Yeah, so those were the most recent ones I played. Hopefully Australia gets another one soon, because
probably,
we
probably.
generally have one in January, but nothing's been announced yet. So hopefully we get another one. Be good to play a local one, or
Yeah.
or casted either way.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining the stream. I think we will wrap it up here and hope to see
Now
you
give a
soon.
quick shout out.
Absolutely, yeah, go
Uh,
ahead, go ahead.
to Bowden for always telling me what to play. Dan for lending me cards. Team Jim for always having me and answering all the questions I
Oh,
asked
cool.
them. They're all good. But yeah, yeah, do give them a follow if you're in the European scene.
Absolutely. Team Jim also having some European national championship champions as well. Peter Milner just won Austrian nationals. And
Yep, and they're planning to win Swiss and German as well, so look out for them.
of course, of course. Yeah, so Jiawei, thank you very much. Hope to see you soon. And bye bye.
All right, sweet. Thanks. Bye.